Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. And a special welcome to you all, special welcome to you all for joining us on this Tooth Bagay lecture series. Tooth Bagay meaning talking about everything. We talk about everything heritage right here at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And we are getting ready for our lecture today. I hope everybody's doing well. Good to see some of y'all, Miss Ramke soon, everybody. Good to see some of y'all. Yes. So we're just allowing for all our friends and family to join in. Fantastic. Yes, welcome, welcome. Fantastic to see a lot of you all here so early with us, yes, at 5:30. So, ladies and gentlemen, my friends, thank you all for joining us today for our lecture. We are looking forward to an amazing chat about the topic climate change. Climate change, yes, something that we have not really looked at in much detail, but there's a lot coming up. Check out the background. What y'all think? Yes, yes, yes. So we're looking forward to an amazing chat. And just like normal, please engage with us. Use the chat box. Just to the center, you'll see chat. And please type in any of your questions, your comments, and so on, so that we can have a wonderful discussion on this topic of climate change and our history and our heritage. Yes, welcome, welcome. How are you going? Fantastic. Good afternoon.
Ariane Potter
Yes.
is one of the persons in the group?
Yes, to present.
Okay. All right, he just joined.
Thank you very much. Yes, nicely. So we all flowing in nicely. So again, welcome, welcome to the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago's Tooth Bagay lecture series. And today we're going to be talking about two major things. One is climate change, and two, our heritage and our history. Yes, welcome. Come in, come in, come in. Fantastic. So while we wait for the remainder to come in, please remember to keep your mics on mute. We have several presenters today, and we would love to hear and be able to engage with everyone. So please remember to keep your mics on mute. And if you need to ask a question, please use the chat box and type in your questions there, and we'd be able to answer them as best to our abilities. Thank you very much. Nicely, yes, welcome. Good to see you. I hope all is well. Nice, nice. I hope all is well. Great. Dr. Mohammed, good afternoon. One of the council members of the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. Pleasure, and I'm happy to have you here this evening.
Pleased to be here. Afternoon, everyone.
Yeah, man. Yes, I too am excited for what is going to be shared today. At a little preview, so looking forward to it, looking forward. Nicely. So we're up to 40 persons. We have close to 120 persons who have registered for today's event. So we're looking forward to the beginning. And you know I like to start. Yes. Everybody, good afternoon. How you going? Yes. So today, again, good afternoon to those who just joined us. My name is Joseph Bertrand, Education and Outreach Officer at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago. And welcome to another installment of our Tutbagai lecture series, where we'll be dealing with climate change and heritage and our history, all the way from France. I'm not too sure, but Ms. Rupsey, you could help me to say good evening in French for me?
Bonsoir.
Bonsoir, yes. Bonsoir. Thank you. And I hope everybody's doing well. And thank you all again for joining us for this very, very important topic of climate change and our history, how all that meets together. We have an amazing panel today of youth who's going to be giving us their perspective on climate change and heritage and history. So I'm looking forward to that. Yes, how are you going? Good to see you too. Welcome everybody. So Mr. Sweet, I'm waiting on your go. We're up to 47
Right
now.
here? Yeah.
Yeah, we're up to 47.
Okay. And 2 more joining. Yeah, we're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so I think we're ready to start.
Yeah, 50. Okay, so you can start.
Nicely. Just added in one more. Right, fantastic. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome officially to our Tutbagai lecture series, a special edition of our Tutbagai lecture series, where we'll be dealing with climate change and heritage preservation and our history. So my name is Joseph Bertrand. Just a little bit of house rules or little reminders. So as the presentations are going on, please remember to keep your mics on mute. So you can take this time now just to check to ensure that your mic is on mute so that we all can hear each contribution. We have several presenters today, so we would love to hear all of them. So just take this time just to double check to ensure that your mic is on mute. Secondly, if you would like to ask a question or pose a view, all right, then you can use the chat box, which is to the center. And please type in your questions so that we would have that interaction. And for those who are accustomed with our Tupagai lectures, it is full discussion. So please use the chat box so that we can hear from you as well. Okay, so we'll be ready to start. And I would like to welcome to our virtual podium, Ms. Kimberly Rose, the Preservation Manager at the Craig Group. Kimberly Rose serves as the Preservation Manager at the Craig Group. She works on projects where historic preservation, climate, and disaster preparedness intersect. In this role, she works on a plan for development geographic information systems, that's the GIS components, including story maps. And Kimberly graduated summa cum laude from the University of Florida with a master's of historic preservation in 2020. Prior, she completed her bachelor's of science in history and at the Martin Methodist College, now the University of Tennessee Southern. Okay, so she is also a trainer for the Resilience Program, the National Alliance Preservation Commission. So I would like to welcome to our podium, Miss Kimberly Rose.
Thank you. I really appreciate that lovely introduction. I'm just going to get my slides pulled up. Let me know if you can see them. Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
we can.
Thank you.
Yes, we can.
So thank you for that lovely introduction again. My name is Kimberly Rose, and I am working on the Resilient Heritage Trinidad and Tobago with the Craig Group. So there are 5 partners, one being, of course, the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, then the University of Florida Historic Preservation Program, where I received my master's. The Craig Group Partners LLC, who I currently work for, the U.S. Ambassadors Fund for Cultural Preservation, and the United States Embassy, Port of Spain. This project comes into 3 pieces. So the first is an integrated methodology. So we're working with digital documentation, which we will discuss shortly, assessments, and developing those management frameworks for conservation and adaptation. This is done additionally with a values-based approach. So we are bringing the community and stakeholder engagement into this process and making sure that they are there and informing us as we go along, but also helping us disseminate those outcomes. And one of those outcomes is a model. And this model is for replication across the rest of Trinidad and Tobago for historic sites and resources, as well as the greater Caribbean region, and to go wherever it needs to go. But our goal is to strengthen those resilience efforts for those historic sites and resources. So our integrated methodology is really focused on the technology, looking at using terrestrial LiDAR or terrestrial laser scanning. It's accurate to 3 millimeters. And essentially it is hundreds of thousands or millions of lasers shot out of this machine, about a 360 rotation. And then it starts to build what we call a point cloud. And I'll show you what a point cloud looks like shortly. But it does another rotation and begins to take photographs. And that is how it's able to then piece together some of the more detailed information, the colors, the way that the buildings look. And we get something that looks like this. So this is a draft version of one of the laser scans that was done by our team members at the University of Florida during their visit to Trinidad and Tobago. So you have the PTSC building on the left and the Fort San Andreas on the right, both of which are one of our sites, and then the lighthouse in the middle, which is another one of our sites that we are studying for this project. Now, what this allows us to do is, because we have this information, we can tie it to, it gives us a topography form. So we know the topography of the streets, we know the topography of the sidewalks, but we can also tie it to elevation data, or we can look at historic photographs. So this is a model of flooding that occurred on May 2013, and our teammates used photos from social media, from news, from news reports that showed this flooding, and we were able to see the lines on the buildings and model what this flooding may have looked like. Now, like I said before, our the laser scans are extremely accurate to 3 millimeters. And so there was a time when we did the similar thing in Nantucket, and we modeled what certain amount of sea level rise would look like on a street. And then a storm came and it had that same amount of storm surge that we had modeled as sea level rise. and it was almost exactly matching. And we've used that photograph, and people are always amazed and surprised that it was that accurate, but it is. It's a wonderful piece of technology. When it comes to a values-based approach, we have used focus groups. That was our first gathering of folks to talk to them. That includes the facilitated group where we were talking about 5 topics. We had a group for heritage tourism, another for building adaptation, and then nature-based adaptation, land use policy, and adaptation for the future. And we invited stakeholders or people that we were interested in talking to and hearing their point of view. This includes civic groups such as a Rotary group or a neighborhood association or a community association, as well as trades. So your tourism, your taxi associations, the yacht club, to basically come and talk to us so that we can get a feel for the attitudes and opinions and their thoughts on how and what they would like resilience to look like where they are. But it also helped us do this kind of information gathering, and we learned very important things. And 2 quotes that I particularly absolutely love from these focus groups. One was on planning and how it is crucial to protect and safeguard areas, but also the need to talk to communities that live in flood-prone areas, because of course they're on the front lines of what we are discussing. And it's important to make sure that what actions come out of our plans are representative and helpful to them. And then, of course, we also have personal stories that come out of these focus groups, such as this individual who is from Southwest Credos on Nantucket, or not Nantucket, on Trinidad, sorry, and remembered this lighthouse that used to be there, but was lost due to erosion and rising sea levels. And all of this goes into creating that model, and that model really is following the steps that we have already followed, our methodology of documentation, modeling, the use of engagements such as the Keeping History Above Water, which I'll talk about shortly, to develop these plans and to then engage and disseminate that information as widely and broadly as possible. So one of the ways is making sure that when we leave, we are making sure that everyone has access to the tools and has training that needs it for the technologies that we've used, because we want this to be replicated. We don't want it to be a one and done. We want Trinidad to be empowered, and the people that are working with these resources to be empowered and make decisions and know what to do when we leave. And so Dr. Sujin Kim with the University of Florida had a 2-day workshop teaching terrestrial laser scanning to the stakeholders and project partners, and showing them the technology and how to do it and what is needed for it. And then, of course, we have the Keeping History Above Water conference. It's coming up soon, March 20th through the 23rd. And we have a wonderful lineup of speakers from all walks of life, all different disciplines. We have historic preservationists, we have scientists, we have biologists. Dr. Mohammed, who is on this call, is one of our subject matter experts and moderators for one of our discussions. But it is this fantastic group of people that are coming together to talk about this on Trinidad. And you are more than welcome to attend virtually, and I'll have the website up at the very end of this. But it will also be recorded if you're not able to attend. That is perfectly fine. It will be available on the National Trust's YouTube page as well. But as you can see, we have individuals who are opening plenary is Jeff Goodell, who wrote The Water Will Come. He's specifically set aside time for to come speak to Trinidad and come speak at the conference. But then you also have directors of programs in the United States, such as Dr. Brett Fortenberry and Dr. Clary Larkin, who are taking time out of their busy academic schedules to come and speak and talk about training the next generation and their projects that they're working on. And of course, you can come and hear more about this project. I know I gave you just a little blip of information, but that will be discussed more in depth with my colleagues Kara and Dr. Larkin and Dr. Kim and I at the very end of the conference. And with that, thank you for letting me come and give a little blurb about the project that is near and dear to my heart. Again, you can visit resilientheritage.tt.com in order to learn more, register for the conference, but also meet the team and see what we've done. And then there is my email as well in case you need to reach out to me or have any questions. I'm more than happy to hear from you. And thank you again for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Kimberly Rose. Thank you so much for your presentation. And also, folks, you heard it. You heard it. We have the conference coming up on the 20th. And please join. So we have the in-person that is already booked. However, the online, you can also be part of the conversation there. So soon, those links will be placed into the chat. And again, thank you very much, Ms. Rose. Now we're moving into the meat of the matter this evening. And I would like to welcome Ms. Catherine Childs, who is the Environmental Programs Manager for the National Trust for the Cayman Islands. Yes, the Cayman Islands. And she holds a master's degree in environmental science with a postgraduate certificate in climate change, and is a registered climate change professional and holds several certificates in the matter, including the climate crisis. Cathy also created carbon offset initiatives to benefit the local communities in the Cayman Islands through the protection of the mangrove forests and the funding of solar energy installations in schools. She works to promote the young Caymanians. Is that how you pronounce it? I hope. Yes, nice. And facilitates their attendance at every year for the international climate meetings. So, without further ado, Ms. Childs.
Hi there. Thank you so much for that kind introduction. It's great to be here today. We're very excited to be part of this webinar. Let me get my presentation up. Hang on one sec. Okay. Everybody seeing that?
Yes,
Yes, it's visible.
Perfect. We'll be speaking today about climate change and heritage, impacts and solutions from Caribbean youth. Now, I understand that many people on the call today won't know very much about the Cayman Islands, so I just like to give you a quick overview. The Cayman Islands are located in the Northwest Caribbean, just about as far from Trinidad as you can get in the region. We're very different in other ways as well. We live on the tops of mountains, but at sea level. Our islands are the peaks of a submarine mountain range that runs west from Cuba. We're on a transformed fault next to one of the deepest ocean trenches in the world. You guys are located where two plates are colliding and driving up volcanoes, but here they're peacefully sliding past each other. We have occasional earthquakes, but no volcanic activity. Instead, we live on ancient coral reefs of limestone. Because of that, there's very little soil and no surface water that isn't brackish. We have no rivers. For that reason, I suppose, no native people seem to have lived in the Cayman Islands. Check out that map. It looks like we were definitely the only ones that didn't have any native people living on them. Columbus discovered these islands on his last voyage and called them Las Tortugas. He noted in his log the abundance of sea turtles, saying it seemed that you could walk ashore on their backs like stepping stones. There were so many of them. For years following, sailing ships would stop in for fresh meat from the turtles. However, no one lived permanently in the Cayman Islands until basically the early 1700s, which is of course quite late compared to our neighbors. And we had to really make do with what we could get from the ocean. Those nets that you see hanging there are for turtles. The people that settled here were a mix of Scottish and Welsh fishermen, escaped slaves, and deserters from Oliver Cromwell's army in Jamaica. We had slavery here, but it was small scale given that we didn't have large plantations like on other islands. When slavery was abolished, the races tended to mix more than in other islands. The settlers had to make their lives from the sea and became very good fishermen, turtlers, sharkers, sponge divers, those are sponges there, and shipbuilders. They had the reputation for being the best shipbuilders in the region, actually. And now today, most Caymanians are of mixed African and European ancestry. The population is about 78,000, with most people living on Grand Cayman, with approximately half the workforce coming from overseas, more than 130 countries around the world. There's no direct taxation, and the economy is based on financial services and tourism. We have one of the highest standards of living in the Caribbean, but also one of the highest costs of living in the world. And you can tell from this picture, it's very flat here. We have no elevation basically at all. The Grand Cayman, where most of the people live, highest point is only about 70 feet, but the average height above sea level is only 7 feet above sea level. So we don't have any rivers, so that makes our water really blue, healthy coral reefs, which is great for tourism. So that's just a snapshot of what we look like here. The National Trust for the Cayman Islands was created 35 years ago with a mandate to protect Cayman's historic and natural heritage. We look after everything that's special about our little corner of paradise, like our endemic species, including our blue iguanas and Cayman parrots, important ecosystems like the last remaining dry tropical forests in the region, and of course, mangroves, of course, and also our built heritage and historic homes. Now, we think that Cayman's heritage is not just wrapped around our historic buildings, but is also really embodied in our natural heritage as well. Places where people would go with their grandparents to go fishing, or forests when you would walk through and see the parrots, right? So that's a big part of the heritage here in the Cayman Islands, and also things like recipes, favorite foods, the way people speak to each other, the dances, right? All of those things are really important culturally for Cayman and are important for us to preserve as a country as well. But our most treasured natural resource is our young people. Our mission to protect the future of our heritage, as you can see on that sign there, we take that seriously. As a low-lying small island state, we know that we'll be hit hard by the effects of climate change. It's our duty to prepare the next generation so that we can be more resilient as a country. We think it's important to give them a seat at the table so that their voices are part of this conversation. And so I invited 6 of them to lead the discussion today. Each one will talk about a subject that they are passionate about. I'll introduce them briefly now so that we can immerse ourselves in the discussion afterwards. 2 of these that you see here, by the way, are going to be part of our discussion today. Rion Porter will go first. I'm going to tell you right now, look out for him being a premier later on. I'm sure we'll see him there because he's involved in everything. He is Cayman Islands Youth Ambassador, a past CARICOM ambassador, and he even was Prime Minister of the CARICOM Regional Youth Parliament in Trinidad and Tobago. So he might be familiar faces and people there. He is at Florida Institute of Technology studying aeronautical science with flight, and he's getting a minor in sustainability and communications. Then after him, we will hear from 3 Protect Our Future students, which is a group of young people in the high schools and many of the schools. And they are very important environmental advocates locally. Jordan is a co-leader, and he is one of the leaders of the Reef Safe Sunscreen campaign that they have, also the Renewable Energy campaign. And because of that, he was recently invited to attend the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency focus group meeting, where we reviewed the country's national energy policy. In his spare time, he's also a competitive swimmer. He's lived and traveled in many places, and he's very passionate about helping the Cayman Islands make positive environmental change. Then we'll hear from Evie, who also goes to Cayman International School, and she's passionate as well about promoting youth voice and the power of activism to make real change in the world around us. Lily will come next. She also is part of the Protect Our Future group, and she leads a subgroup called Heritage and Culture, which strives to incorporate cultural practices into modern day living. By doing so, they hope not only to inspire our youth, but also the youth of the Caribbean to use sustainable resources instead of environmentally destructive ones. It's a great goal. Aaliyah General is currently studying in University of West London, and she's studying international relations and sociology. Her interest is society, international relations, and social institution. And that's become a big part of what she does at school. And she's going to be speaking to us today about agriculture. And then finally, at the end, we'll have Julian Manco, who works for the Cayman government as a policy advisor for planning and infrastructure. He studied politics and international relations in school, and he has a keen interest in Caribbean history, culture, and politics. He endeavors to draw from his experience living and traveling abroad to promote greater engagement with Cayman's cultural identity and built heritage. He hopes to contribute to local heritage preservation efforts and has assisted the National Trust with updating our heritage registry. This is an amazing group of young people. I'm so proud to have them here today, and I can't wait to hear everything they've got to say. So I'm going to hand it over to Rion. Let me stop the share here so he can take over.
Thank you, Cathy. All right, hello, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to my presentation about climate justice and why the youth are most important persons in this fight against climate change. So Cathy gave a wonderful introduction, and just to get to know me more, I'm the Cayman Islands Youth Ambassador, past CARICOM Ambassador, Certified Youth Counselor, member of the National Youth Commission. I spent the last 5 years in Youth Parliament. I also served as the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago's Parliament and Regional Parliament, as well as Commonwealth Parliament. I served as the Speaker of that in St. Lucia. I've worked with Dr. Fletcher at the Climate Change Foundation, as well as beyond Rihanna, Claire de Leon Foundation. I am currently the Florida Tech Chief Justice and the chair of the University Disciplinary Committee. So, what is climate justice? I'm sure you all know, but I'm just going to reiterate some of these facts for you. So climate justice is a movement that focuses on the human rights and basic needs of people in relation to climate change. It seeks to ensure that people who are the most vulnerable and marginalized, including Indigenous people, women, especially women, youth, especially youth, and people of color, us here in the Caribbean, have the voices to be heard and their rights are upheld in all decisions related to the environment. So, my next slide. Why is climate change important? We talk about our social and economic status of life, but most people forget the most important persons in this climate justice are the youth. The youth are the most important people in this fight against this claim, because at the end of the day, they're always going to tell us the youth are the future, but I will say this over and over. The youth are no longer the future. They are the present, they are the now, and we need to be heard. So what is the importance of the youth? The importance of youth involved and cannot be overstated as they become some of the most effective people by climate change. Young people have the unique set of perspective that can help shape more effective solutions than proposed by adults alone. Thanks to Ms. Cathy, Cayman National and the National Trust, as well as the International National Trust, I was able to go to COP27 in Egypt, and I'm going to give you guys a little preview of a movie that's coming out so you can show how powerful young people are. Give you guys a little preview. I can't let it go so fast. I have to get those royalties in. So I'm just giving you a preview. So Trinidad, if you want to save your water for your future daughter, go green and save Trinidad and Tobago. Do you guys hear that? Because I'm hearing some breaking news.
You want to party? Have carnival or bacchanal? Then you must save Trinidad and Tobago. Get the youths involved. Balance down the road in climate justice initiatives, such as volunteering with organizations or engaging in public campaigns and events. Pump your flags and jump up by engaging in these activities. Youths can help raise awareness about climate change and its impacts on their local community, while also pushing for more action from politicians and other decision makers.
Take it from me and save Trinidad and Tobago. Thank you very much.
Now we'll hear from Jordan in the Protect Our Future group. I will share my screen.
Hello, my name is Jordan Lyle, and I am one of the co-leaders of Protect Our Future, a youth environmental activist group based in the Cayman Islands. As we know, the Caribbean is facing some pressing environmental challenges, particularly when it comes to energy consumption. The Caribbean Islands are heavily reliant on fossil fuels, which not only contributes to climate change, but also makes them vulnerable to price fluctuations and supply disruptions. By implementing solar panels in the Caribbean Islands, we can help mitigate these risks by also reducing the island's carbon footprint. Solar panels are a clean and renewable source of energy that can be used to power homes, businesses, and even vehicles. By installing solar panels on cars and other vehicles, we can reduce the need for gasoline and diesel, which are major contributors to air pollution and greenhouse gas emissions. But the benefits of solar panels in the Caribbean Islands go far beyond environmental sustainability. Solar energy can also help drive economic growth and development in the region. By investing in the renewable energy infrastructure, we can create new jobs and new businesses in the local communities. Additionally, solar energy can help reduce the cost of electricity, which can make it more affordable for businesses and households to operate. However, implementing solar panels in the Caribbean Islands is not without its challenges. One of the main obstacles that we've faced as an island is the initial cost of installation and the upfront investment that is required. While solar panels can provide much needed long-term savings, the upfront investment can be a barrier for many businesses and households. To address this issue, to address this challenge, we need to explore new financing models such as community solar projects and public-private partnerships. Implementing solar panels in the Caribbean Islands is a crucial step towards a more sustainable future. It will not only help reduce the island's carbon footprint, but also drive economic growth and development in the region. We need to work together to overcome the challenges and seize the opportunities presented by renewable energy for a more sustainable future. The next section I will cover will be my take on the Cayman Islands National 5-Year Energy Policy, which I attended 2 months ago. It was here that we discussed potential ideas for ways to implement renewable energy into Grand Cayman and the other Cayman Islands. However, the ideas could be used in other islands across the Caribbean. The image on the bottom shows the public awareness survey results for reasons why sustainable energy wasn't put into place. As you can see, the reasons below, things such as pricing, lack of public funding, and other things could be solved quite quickly, and with proper government support and finance, we will be able to fix very efficiently. Some of the most available options that we saw, especially with the decrease in prices for renewable energy, would be to introduce programs to provide benefits to people who use renewable energy. On top of this, some of the main sectors that create carbon emissions are now the transportation and real estate sector, which with the right funding can reduce each Caribbean island's carbon footprint significantly. I will now introduce my fellow co-leader, Evie Sweetman, who will be speaking about climate change and our marine environment.
Good afternoon. My name is Evie Sweetman, and I'm also one of the leaders of Protect Our Future in the Cayman Islands. Today I'll be talking about the impact of climate change on oceans, especially on coral reefs. As I'm sure you're all aware, climate change has a huge and catastrophic effect on all areas of the natural world. But the impacts of climate change on the oceans are really, really severe, and there's something that I'm really passionate about talking about today. Rising ocean temperatures can kill off native fish species, alter migration patterns, and harm endangered plant species, not to mention add to the risk of severe weather events such as hurricanes or typhoons, which add to risks of flooding, which are obviously damaging for huge amounts of different reasons. One of the areas where we in Cayman see climate change affecting our reefs is coral bleaching. All corals get their bright colors from microscopic algae known as zooxanthellae, which photosynthesize in the corals. However, when temperatures rise, even as much as 2 degrees, the corals expel the zooxanthellae, they lose their color, and ultimately they die. While it's possible for some corals to recover from these bleaching events, it's not very common, and it makes corals far more vulnerable to other diseases, such as stony coral tissue loss disease, which we suffer from a lot in the Cayman Islands, and which is traveling around the Caribbean at a really dangerous rate. While in Cayman, we've been lucky not to experience the kind of mass bleaching events we see in areas such as Australia and the Great Barrier Reef. Our reefs are still under a lot of stress due to heat. This is catastrophic for the huge ecosystem the coral reefs support, not just in Cayman, but all around the Caribbean. It's not only the algae in the coral, but also the fish species, sea turtles, crabs, shrimp, stingrays, and more. Not only that, but coral reefs are an incredibly important feature of the landscape, which protect us against severe weather events. In flooding or hurricanes, they can stop storm swells and help to ensure the safety of islands and everything on them. Not only can they protect the landscape, but they can protect our built heritage as well. Protecting the coral reefs can ultimately lead to protecting everything on the islands, and ironically, protecting our natural heritage can protect our built heritage as well. On top of this, coral reefs themselves are a critical part of Cayman as a part of the heritage, just as Ms. Cathy was talking about. The ocean is a part of Cayman's history and culture, and the loss of such a critical part of the landscape is also a loss of the part of our heritage and our connection to the past. Now, the ocean is often called the Earth's blue heart, and when we see parts of the ocean in crisis like this, it's a signal to us that our habits and our behaviors aren't working. It's like an alarm bell, indicating what we'll be facing in the rest of the world if we don't make a change in our behaviors, especially in those behaviors that cause climate change. However, the good news is that we still can protect and conserve our oceans. There are loads of opportunities to advocate for the health of the ocean, both locally and internationally, and to help the ocean through our own actions. Something as simple as using public transport instead of your own car, or not using single-use plastics, can help in the fight against climate change and global temperature rise, which is actually something that one of my co-leaders, Lily, will be talking about later. However, an action that's almost more important than these steps is using your voice to speak up in support of the ocean and in support of legislation and governmental action that will support this. Collective action from the community, pulling in all sorts of different groups, including the National Trust in wherever you are, is incredibly important, and it sends a really powerful message to governments that the ocean is worth protecting and saving, and that we need to do whatever we can to facilitate that. A way we've been doing this in Cayman is by highlighting and protecting the hope spots in Cayman. Hope spots are areas of the ocean that have been designated as particularly helpful and beneficial to the health of the ocean overall. It's just areas that are really in need of protection. They're designated as hope spots by an international organization called Mission Blue, which is dedicated to protecting the ocean and is led by a renowned oceanographer called Dr. Sylvia Earle. If an area is designed as a hope spot, it needs to be protected. And if it's legally protected, for example, made a marine protected area, it improves the health of the ocean overall and helps in the fight against the damage climate change can do to our oceans. But legally protecting the ocean doesn't just mean hope spots. Community-grounded protests or movements in response to threats facing the ocean can be hugely beneficial and meaningful and have the power to create real change. In 2017, a large cruise ship port was proposed in the Cayman Islands, which would have been really, really damaging to everything in the Cayman Islands, specifically the corals, as well as encouraging cruise ships, which are very bad for the environment due to their carbon emissions. Protect Our Future and other leaders from all over the island came together to protest the port, and ultimately the referendum did not go through and the port was not constructed. This simple action protected and conserved the ocean just a little bit more, and it all came not from the government or from a large organization, but from people who truly cared about the ocean and everything it influences and wanted to protect it. It is possible and indeed necessary to save the ocean from the perils of climate change. Thank you so much. I'm going to introduce you to my co-leader, Lily, who's going to speak about plastic and its connection to climate change.
Good afternoon. My name is Liliana Laria, and like my two other presenters, I am also a leader of a youth-led environmental organization, as they have both said, called Protect Our Future. And as Ms. Cathy pointed out, I am a sub-leader of a group of a subgroup called Heritage and Culture, And I believe it is very important to highlight that plastic is affecting not only climate change, but also our cultural practices, but I will touch on that later. Firstly, I believe that one of the key things that we need to highlight is the perseverance of plastic, and plastic is one of the most persistent pollutants on Earth, as a distinct quality of it is that it takes 20 to 500 years to decompose. And this is a problem as our consumption of plastic is at an all-time high. To bring it to a local perspective, as you can see by my two photos here, which is actually a local beach in Grand Cayman, which is the biggest island amongst the three of the Cayman Islands. It is located in East End and is called Spotters Bay. And Cayman Islands is an island with only a population of 75,000 people. Yet on a capita level, we're producing 0.252 kilograms of plastic waste per person. Plastic production in Cayman is quite high, and we can only imagine what the statistics are like in other highly populated islands in the Caribbean. And as said on my slide, though it is properly discarded, it still creates greenhouse gas emissions. However, the amount of emissions it produces in its manufacturing is a key fact that is needed to be highlighted as well, as it creates billions of tons of greenhouse gases, as according to the Center for International Environmental Law. And this law also claims that by 2050, plastic production will be responsible for up to 13% of our planet's total carbon budget. The amount of greenhouse gases that are being produced from plastic is a dangerous amount. And we as a youth-led environmental organization have grown cognizant of this and have chosen to act on it in hopes of inspiring young people, not only in the Cayman Islands, but also around the Caribbean. Which brings me to my next slide where I talk about solutions that we have begun to adopt. So two things that Protect Our Future has instilled into not only our club, but also around the island is replace and clean up, which connects to my subgroup, Heritage and Culture, where we try to utilize a natural resource that can be found on island, which is called silver thatch palm, which in the past was used for a multitude of things, but one of the main things is bags. So a few facts about this resource is that it is both water resistant and very durable. It is used for holding fish, food, and a lot of other things. However, as we've moved forward towards the future, we have begun to forget its purpose, and therefore instilled using more plastic into our modern day life. And yes, plastic is agreeably very durable, lightweight, and can be used a multitude of times, but as I highlighted in my previous slide, it destroys our environment. So one of the key things that my group would like to highlight is how resourceful natural resources can be and how resourceful they can be used in our modern day lives. So that's where replace comes to tie in, because we can replace the plastic bags that we use daily with natural resource products such as silver thatch palm bags. Another thing that can be used to replace plastic is an initiative that one of our other POF leaders has instilled into our school, which is CIS Inspires. So as we all know, one of the biggest contributors of plastic waste is our schools, because in our cafeterias every day we use different sources of plastic trays, plastic forks, plastic spoons, plastic straws. However, with CIS Inspires, we have chosen to replace plastic in our cafeteria and have chosen to replace them with reusable products. Though yes, this is a more expensive take, it is a very long-lasting take, and it's a more long-lasting solution compared to something that can be used once, yes, but is very damaging to our environment, such as plastic. Which leads me to my second point of cleanup. So a very important thing that Protect Our Future has been practicing for the past couple of years is having campaigns on our island. So though campaigns bring awareness to the plastic problem. An example of this is a Protect Our Future campaign, which is Our Future is Not Single Use, where we take pictures of various spots on all three islands that are very much littered with plastic. And basically these campaigns just bring attention around the island, and even we've had attention from other parts of the Caribbean to show the immense plastic problem that we have. And it is a problem that the youth is actually recognizing this, and not only adults that are in positions such as the Ministry of Environmental Health, but the youth is finally recognizing that plastic is affecting our climate and it is also affecting our environment, which leads me to beach cleanups. This beach cleanups is a very important practice that we have to instill in our daily lives, because as Trinidad and Tobago and Cayman Islands, we all understand the importance that beaches have to our culture and heritage. Beaches are very essential parts to our island, so we want to keep them beautiful and clean. However, plastic is disrupting that. And we need to start practicing cleaning up our beaches to ensure that they have the same beauty that they've had in the past, to ensure that we have them in the present, and to make sure that the future of the Caribbean can have those as well. Thank you. That which leads me to introducing Aaliyah, who will be talking about agriculture.
Thank you, Lily. I'll just pull up my presentation to show you guys. Good afternoon, everybody. Is my audio okay? Can everybody hear me? Great, wonderful. Okay, so as Cathy introduced me earlier, my name is Aaliyah General. I'm 20 years old. I go to the University of West London, and my presentation today will be about agriculture as the key to combating Caribbean food insecurity. So as I said, or as Cathy said, I went to COP27 earlier this year as a Cayman Islands representative, and it was honestly an eye-opening experience. Prior to COP27, I knew that I wanted to be involved in social change and environmentalism, but I didn't understand how I would apply my degree and my personal experiences to something that would actually have an impact. Going to COP27, I was able to, oh, you guys aren't seeing my presentation. Okay, that's a little embarrassing. Okay, I will just, here we go. Yeah. Hold on. I get like 3 minutes in and you guys can't hear me. Oh my goodness. Oh, live and learn.
Wonderful to watch you talk. I felt like I was a really important part of a conversation. So please don't be embarrassed. It was really good so far. Can't wait to see your presentation.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Okay, let's see. Can you see this?
Not yet.
Oh my goodness.
Are you pushing share screen?
I'm trying to, and it's not working. Here we go. Okay, got it. Thank you for your patience, everybody. I really appreciate it. Does that work? You got it? Great. Yep. Okay, wonderful. So I've introduced myself a little bit. And yeah, as I was saying, COP27 really gave me insight into critical problems and solutions that worked alongside my own personal experiences. And I think the most important part was that it showed me that young people just like myself were interested in these topics and wanted to have a discussion and wanted to make actual change. So as a sociology and international relations major, I believe that one of the best ways that we can restructure society first is from the inside out, so through our interpersonal relationships. So that would be situations like if I'm speaking to Cathy, or if I'm speaking to my grandparents or my younger sister. And then the second best way is from the top down. While I completely love the power that is held in interpersonal dialogue, I definitely think that support from legislators is just as important and if not critical to this whole process. So what I'm hoping for with my work, both through this personal research and what I'll be writing my dissertation on, is that it'll become a kind of system of information that lawmakers can use to structure their future plans. So this is just an outline of what I'll be talking about today. And I'm going to start with why is agriculture important, segue into how I think we can develop agriculture as a region, and then we'll look at some examples. So to think about why agriculture is important, I want you to look at these 3 different crops that have had varying importance for different countries in the Caribbean over the past several decades, centuries, however far you take it back. And we'll start with sugarcane, which was most notably farmed in Haiti because of the slave trade and the colonialization of the area. And Haiti was known as the Pearl of the Caribbean because of how proficient it was with the production of sugar. In fact, in the 17th century, Haiti produced and exported 40% of Britain and France's sugar. So obviously that is a huge amount of local income. That's a large amount of revenue, and it would have been a large part of the job supply, but obviously that was not a thing because they were enslaved. However, at the time, Haiti was still a massive importer of food. And this is a trend that you'll see throughout some of these other Caribbean countries that I'll mention, that despite the fact that we'll have a lot of exports at one time, there will still be this need or this reliance on other countries importing goods. Sugar made way for incredible wealth for slave owners and shaped the post-revolution society that we see today in Haiti. The next crop that I want you to look at is coffee, which I chose to associate with Jamaica because of Blue Mountain Coffee. I think everybody should be very familiar with that brand. And annually, Blue Mountain Coffee brings in about $12 million USD for Jamaica. So again, a significant impact on revenue, employment, income, and general GDP. However, in 2001, Jamaica, while exporting $227.7 million worth of agricultural products, imported $402.7 million worth. And we see this difference again of countries that have this amazing capability to support themselves based on what they can provide for other nations, but not being able to do the same for themselves. And finally, our last crop to look at is thatch palm, which is native or important to the Cayman Islands as it's part of our maritime history, as Lily said, and as Cathy stated. It was used in fishing and turtling, as well as boat making. And because of its durability, in 1964, it became very popular. And we actually ended up exporting 1.3 million fathoms of rope in that year. And that's, again, that's a lot of income for the island, and that's a lot of development and attention that we should be able to take as, okay, we have the ability to export this amount of produce. We have these natural resources, so why aren't we using them? Because in 2022, we're exporting these thousands and thousands of metric tons of fresh vegetables and adding benefit to another country's economy. So how do we solve food insecurity? I like to think about large issues like this in small compartments. I find that it makes it easier for me to break it down and understand what exactly we are dealing with. And the way that I've chosen to do this for food insecurity is to look at it through the lens of innovation, legislation, and collaboration. So in terms of innovation, we can prepare for the future, but only if we are directly involved in its curation. Now, I'll give you examples next of some of these, how we can do this and how this is already in motion. But new methods of agriculture will be key to ensuring we can survive on the global market. Because I think, if nothing else, I think COVID-19 has proven to us, and the COVID pandemic as a whole has proven to us that we need to be more self-sufficient now than ever. Because if markets overseas go under and we are so heavily reliant on them that we cannot produce our own food for our own people, then we've done each other a disservice. Now, in terms of legislation, governing bodies need to prioritize laws that protect and bolster small landholders and position the Caribbean as a force of nature within agriculture. My dissertation for next year will actually focus on how the US's influence on Caribbean trade relations has impacted our ability to provide for our people at home, rather than relying on outside influence and outside markets. And I think being able to pinpoint how we can reverse that and make ourselves more desirable and marketable to the global market will really allow us to move past this stage of food insecurity. And then finally, for collaboration, I just want us to remember that while it may feel like it, we are not alone in this fight for sustainable development. Similar to how this webinar was set up, collaboration between the islands should always be prioritized. And just to conclude, these are some examples that we can learn from. For innovation, we have Primitive Greens in Grand Cayman, which is a container farm, or a repurposed container farm that grows various greens such as spinach and lettuce and markets to the local grocery stores. And then we have the Sustainable Agriculture in the Caribbean project, which takes place in St. Lucia, for example. And it essentially provides women and older people with skills and research knowledge to be better equipped to deal with climate change and make more environmentally sustainable decisions. And then finally, in St. Kitts and Nevis, we have the Fahis Agricultural Women's Cooperative, which is a group of women that take natural products that they grow and use value-adding processes to put them on the market and provide resources for schools and other elderly people in the area. So with that being said, I'd like to conclude there and thank you all for listening. These are all of my contact details if you'd like to know more about me and the things that I'd like to do. And I really hope you look into this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaliyah. Our next student will be, or young person, he's not a student anymore, will be Julian, but unfortunately, our island has experienced a power outage. I'm sure that you guys in Trinidad have had those occasionally. Maybe not, since you're an oil producing country, you don't have any problems with that, but Julian is on his way to this office, which still has power. The rest of the kids that were at Protect Our Future have also fallen off. But we could take the time now, if you like, to have a discussion while you wait for him to join us here. Would you like to bring up any questions, Joseph?
Sure, not a problem. And I'm sorry to hear that we had one massive outage before. Craziness, but anyway, we totally understand. So one of the questions that came in, for all of the youth involved, maybe in one statement, what got you so passionate about climate change and these types of topics to really hone in your study on essential? So what would, just in one statement for all of our youth panel, what I think that they're trying to get at is how can we then stimulate the youth within Trinidad and Tobago to have this type of mindset, because these presentations are fantastic. So to the youth.
Is it okay if I take that question first?
Not all at
You're
once.
the only one left, Aaliyah, so please do.
Oh.
Yeah, not all at once.
Because you're in England with the good power, so yes, please.
Yes.
Okay, I think speaking from a personal perspective, the thing that really pushed me to learn about environmentalism and really gun for this kind of education was, strangely enough, the cost.
I don't know what to do.
Sorry. Oh. Was really the cost of living back home. So going into the grocery store and not really being able to buy the things that I needed for a decent price, or watching these prices kind of fluctuate up and down, and just seeing the people that I love be strapped for cash because of how little we were able to support ourselves. And that really made me feel like there has to be a better solution. There has to be a better way for us to support ourselves and still be a part of the global market. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for that. And we have one question in the chat about the findings. Catherine, I hope you can take this one for us. How would these findings or these ideas and plans then translate to other countries that may have different economies?
Well, I think that around the world, we're facing the same kind of challenges, especially in small island countries around the world, right? We're the least responsible for creating this problem and yet going to be hit the hardest by some of its effects. And no
Right.
matter if it's Trinidad or Cayman, it's going to be the same stronger hurricanes. I think in past years, I used to be a sailor, and I remember that people used to go south by Trinidad to escape the hurricanes. And I don't think that that's 100% anymore, right? You guys are getting more hurricanes more southerly than you used to. We're going to have sea level rise. We'll all have more heat. The heat forecasts are supposed to be really uncomfortable for us soon. It'll make it difficult for us to grow the crops that we need to be able to have a good standard of living, as Aaliyah has alluded to. So we're all going to be facing these challenges together. And I encourage everybody
Agreed.
that's there in Trinidad and beyond to take part in this conference is coming up next week, Keeping History Above Water, because it is, I think, going to come up with some really good solutions that will be useful throughout the Caribbean. Whether you come from a huge mountainous island like Trinidad or a little tiny flat island like Cayman, I think it's going to help us to give us the tools to be able to preserve our history, heritage, and culture.
I missed the last bit. Sorry,
The last bit that I said?
missed the last bit, yes.
I basically was plugging your conference and saying that everybody should come because it's going to give us lots of
Give us the
tools,
plug.
no matter where
Fantastic.
we live,
Right.
to be able to protect the things that we love, the beautiful historic buildings, the natural areas that protect us. All these things, we need to have the tools to do that. And what we're going to be learning at this conference is I think, going to be transformative. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And another question for you. With the Protect Our Future group, what was it like to tell us a little bit more about the genesis of this group?
Well, I'm sorry that they're not here to talk about it themselves, but I think that the genesis was there was many students in the schools that felt like they needed to have more of an outlet to have their voices heard a little bit more. And some of the teachers, science teachers and things, sort of facilitated them being able to connect with other schools as well, so that they could, there was some public, some private, but all students about high school age, and that had this drive to be able to make a difference in the world and to be able to improve what they were learning, their future, because they're all learning about climate change and what the challenge is going to be like, and feeling like, you know, I need to have some power over my own life in the future, so that it's a better one for me and my children. And so they have this feeling like they want to make a difference. And the plastic issue is huge as well. So they started with a small little club. It was 3 students that started it. They were really passionate individuals, facilitated by a really great teacher. And then it's just mushroomed out from there. And I know my own students have been involved in it, and they just really find it really fulfilling to be able to have an outlet for that emotion that they feel, but also the satisfaction to know that they're listened to.
Thank you very much. That is fantastic, and understanding that there is a space for this type of conversation and then work. So another question came in about what happened to Trinidad sugarcane agriculture. And as far as I'm aware, it was an economic decision to close down the refineries, etc. So that in itself may be something that we can look at coming out of the presentation on the agriculture, looking at the cocoa and so on. So Ms. General, there's a question about encouraging these crops. What are your thoughts based on that? So Trinidad has an extremely high quality in cocoa. So what would you suggest in terms of encouraging this?
So to me,
venture?
that thank you for the question. I've been watching the chat. I think to me, that is that lies in the realm of making space for our local crops and our local agriculture in terms of how our economics is set up. So that is where I focus on the legislation around international trade agreements. I think it's unfortunate that we have such fertile lands and such high quality crops that people are familiar with and they know about. But because of our dealings with countries like the US or the UK or Canada and how we've kind of situated ourselves as a region to take in their products and not really export our own, I think that's how it impacts it. And I think in terms of making space for it, we need to push our legislators to really use their power and the resources that they have at hand to say, listen, we appreciate that you are a massive exporter and we've done things like this for a certain way with you, but times are changing. We need to be able to support our local economies. And if that means that some trade deals have to be changed or switched around a little bit, then that's okay. Because at the end of the day, prosperity is not prosperity if it is just for one country. And if we are really looking to develop globally, then it needs to be an effort on all parts. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you so
problem.
much for that. I see we have Julian joining us again.
Yes, hello. My apologies for
Nice.
that.
No,
Is everyone able to hear me correctly?
Cool. You need to share screen, etc.
No, just me.
Okay.
Well, thank you everyone for your patience and my apologies for that. So it's my pleasure this afternoon to be part of this regional dialogue on climate change and heritage, to share some of my research and perspectives. I thank Ms. Cathy for the lovely introduction earlier, so I'll keep mine brief. So as a young Caymanian, I share many of the concerns regarding my future with my peers as they've outlined, and I truly believe that the mobilization of youth across our islands is really key to developing innovative, sustainable solutions to many of these issues that have been discussed. So in some context, the relationship between climate change and cultural heritage may often go unnoticed. And so in the next few minutes, I just hope to address some of these links, as well as the impacts and solutions that could be derived from this relationship. And really, as an underpinning for this understanding, I want to draw upon the ideas of the well-respected visionary and current Prime Minister of Barbados, the Honorable Mia Mottley, as she's been known to speak about the lack of cultural confidence that can be present in the Caribbean, that restricts the region in various ways. So this can be due to historical factors such as colonialism, in the present day neo-colonial factors, for example. So as we discuss the importance of cultural heritage in the context of climate change, I just want us to keep this idea of cultural confidence on our minds. So of course, the increased vulnerability of small island developing states and coastal settlements in particular have become quite clear in the face of climate change. We all know firsthand and have seen in previous years the significant coastal erosion that's taking place now, sea level rise, the increasing frequency of storms and hurricanes in recent years. And so with more severe flooding, droughts, as well as cumulative factors such as changes in temperature, cultural heritage assets in our islands are under imminent threat, I would say, and would encounter quite significant loss if there is no appropriate action taken now. So in addition to this heightened vulnerability, many of our economies are rooted in the tourism industry. Some of us are more reliant on it than others, but this further risks significant economic impacts as a result of the loss of cultural heritage. Now, while we're quite certain that cultural heritage is under attack from climate change, It's also affected by socioeconomic pressures and the accelerated pace of urbanization on our islands. I speak from the experience of Cayman in particular, which has seen rapid development in the past few decades. So I really view sustainable development initiatives as the most productive frontier for addressing the link between historic heritage preservation and climate change. So this could include practices such as more appropriate land use during infrastructure projects that minimize the impact on mangrove forests, and aspects like this, which would really underpin long-term vision-based sustainable development policy. So as we approach solutions, I want to highlight three main areas of focus that I believe to be most pertinent. So those being increasing cultural confidence, learning from traditional building practices, as well as the importance of education. So the history of settlement in Cayman, as Ms. Cathy had pointed out earlier, only really dates back to the early 1700s, when by comparison, the first human settlement in Trinidad and Tobago dates back at least 7,000 years. So I say this to highlight the impacts on the development of culture and identity, which has an influence on the way societies interact with their environment. So at a period at the present when 53.5% of the population in Cayman is Caymanian, I believe that the Caymanian identity is really built more on cultural values rather than ethnicity or ethnic background. As a result, cultural heritage would play quite a significant role in preserving a sense of unity and community, which I would say is vital for Cayman as we tackle issues. For many first-generation Caymanians in particular, cultural awareness and access to cultural heritage is a crucial element for finding your place in these islands. And I think it really strengthens the sense of responsibility in communities, and it can result in more resilient recoveries after a crisis, for example. So looking beyond that, looking beyond built heritage, existing built heritage rather, I want to emphasize what I consider to be quite exciting and hopeful opportunity for innovation by focusing on traditional building techniques as a means to build better disaster resiliency while continuing a legacy of cultural heritage, which is all congruent with climate adaptation efforts. So it's the reality that many modern Western iterations of sustainable practices are often not the most favorable or applicable when copied directly into our environment. So to use veganism as an example that we might recognize, the movement is often viewed by the Western periphery as sort of an agenda that, if it were adopted, essentially whitewashes one's culinary heritage. When in reality, of course, many pre-colonial societies had contextually appropriate solutions and were able to interact with their environment sustainably. So I emphasize this because I want to encourage us to build the cultural confidence to be introspective in our approaches and not downplay the importance of our built heritage in informing how we continue to develop. So across the globe, there are countless communities that were designed to work with minimum energy and enable living practices to be more attuned to the local environment. So there's no doubt that there are many lessons to learn from looking at indigenous knowledge for building and preserving sustainably. One way is to utilize or adopt rather bioclimatic design practices in development. So this really focuses on building practices that are in harmony with the natural surroundings and local climate. So this is ensuring a more environmentally sustainable, culturally appropriate, and disaster resilient structure. So a variety of studies really support this claim that traditional techniques are often more disaster resilient. So using the example of Haiti following the devastating 2010 earthquake, a lot of researchers and architects at the time found that traditional buildings behaved a lot better than new structures that were built with largely foreign materials and techniques. Since then, in Haiti, modern reinterpretations of traditional building systems have been implemented in pilot programs with great success. Similarly, in the Pacific, in the face of powerful storms, islands such as Samoa have also begun to recognize that a return to indigenous practices of building, planning communities really could be key to creating disaster resilient communities of the future. So the increased tendencies that we see in small island developing states to use materials that are not really suitable for the environment is not really representative of an evolution of infrastructure that's based on pragmatic or environmental changes in the islands. However, I would say that the opportunity remains to reimagine these practices for a more sustainable future. And finally, to highlight education, it's quite clear that we need to ensure future generations are equipped to maintain preservation practices that we develop. I note that the recently established Resilience Heritage Initiative and Heritage Keepers Project by the National Trust for Trinidad and Tobago really embodies these participatory methods by consulting with the public as well as engaging with students. And similarly, as we've heard from in Cayman, organizations such as Protect Our Future and National Trust initiatives, such as the Youth Stewardship Program and the Save Our Sites campaign, operate with the same goal in mind. Cultural heritage is easy to erase, unfortunately, and the voices of young people are really the hope for the future. As I previously noted, new generations can sometimes struggle to develop their identity and values without access to cultural heritage, not just impacting their sense of responsibility and sense of self in their community, but risking a less politically engaged populace, which is, of course, less likely to push for sustainable development practices. So I build upon my previous point about the need to increase our cultural confidence, which I think can be facilitated by educational strategies that ensure adequate local history taught in schools, including local literature, visits to historic sites, as well as projects that deal with the environment. So really equipping the new generations with the knowledge as well as the interest and the drive to continue this work in the future. So in conclusion, knowledge has evolved and must continue to do so by seeking adaptive solutions. Climate adaptation is not existing in isolation, as we know. I would say it's largely embedded in elements such as how people live and how we use materials. So I would recommend a holistic and culturally appropriate approach to climate adaptation. I would really say that's necessary. Beyond the clear importance for just preserving heritage, I hope that these solutions that I've discussed inspire and bring some hope for sustainable development initiatives, where efforts towards preserving cultural heritage as well as climate change adaptation are able to really work together. So thank you, everyone, and I'll hand over to Ms. Cathy. I recognize that the Q&A session has started, but I'm looking forward to getting involved. So thank you.
Thank you, Julian. That was awesome. Very impressive.
Yes, fantastic, fantastic. And if you would allow me, just taking the words from Ms. Joycelyn, totally impressed with the youth presentations, involvement, and suggestions for the future. So please give yourselves a big round of applause. Fantastic, fantastic, fantastic. Thank you all very much for bringing your perspectives and for your expertise as well. Just getting straight back into the Q&A session. For plastics, what was suggested in terms of the transition process for replacing these plastics, keeping in mind that many packaging and bottle industries and so on depend on the plastics. So what would be the suggestions in terms of the transition?
Elia, you go ahead.
Sure. I think we should point out that there is actually, the transition has already started back home in the Cayman Islands and across the Caribbean as well. We have a youth-led company that focuses on biodegradable cutlery and bowls. They're actually edible, which is also really cool. Yeah. I think that is probably one of the biggest parts of the transition. Like I said, the innovation is going to be absolutely necessary to kind of show people that while there is a big focus and a big reliance on these single-use plastics, it is not the only way. And there are communities all across the world that have been using their own methods and natural resources rather than single-use plastics for centuries, for decades. And I think if we take time to learn from those communities and then empower our young people to say, if you see something that needs to be fixed and changed and you have the means, or we can help you get the means. I think that'll be a really important part of making that transition a little easier without ruffling too many feathers. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much for succinctly answering. And interesting with the edible cutlery. I will look into that, put some ketchup on it.
You should, you should.
So we have time for just one more. But to the panel, please just peruse the questions. If any are relevant to your presentations, please respond to them. If not, you can just drop your email addresses in the chat so that they'll be able to get the questions answered. All right, last question. Other than solar power, is Cayman considering any other forms of renewables, wave, wind?
Go ahead, Aaliyah. I'll speak if nobody else wants to.
I feel so bad. Oh my goodness. I think we had discussed geothermal energy at one point, oceanic energy. I don't remember the name of it, but basically pulling that energy from not the tides, but necessarily like the energy that emits from underneath the waves. I think that's in the works. I wouldn't be able to speak on that too much because we'd spoken to an expert, but yeah.
Understood.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we have decent wind here. So they looked at wind power as an option, but because we're so small, there was concern about interfering with the Doppler radar facility and also the airport off-limit zone. So that's held back our our wind opportunities. There was also, I think what Aaliyah might be referring to is there was another plant that was discussed being built because it's so deep here, so close in, that there was another idea for energy where you use a chemical that when it goes so far down, it gets cold and it comes back up and it gets warm, and that temperature difference actually makes electricity. And it was going to be one of the first in the world. It hasn't been able to get permitted though, just it's just the slowness of government, I think, but hopefully that one day will, because it's new, one day will be permitted. But the truth is that solar is something that is cheaper than fossil fuels now, and we have plenty of sunshine. So there's no reason why we aren't further along with solar here in the Cayman Islands. I think we could do something about the price point to make it easier for everybody to benefit like they've done. I know Barbados is outpacing us by leaps and bounds. So I think that we could be doing a lot more. And I hope that I believe that some changes are happening in government now to facilitate that.
Okay, thank you very much. And as we kind of rounding up, any final thoughts, words from all our presenters before we take it over to Ms. Rup Singh?
You guys go ahead.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the questions that came up in the chat, if I could just look at that again. I love all of these questions, by the way. They're really good and they're quite intuitive. So I appreciate them. Let's see. The question that caught my eye the most was Trinidad's production of high quality cocoa. And I think, now personally, I still have quite a bit of research to do in terms of who we would be partnering with in the region and the main experts of which countries and that kind of thing. So this is, thank you, Rebecca. This is actually new to me, and I'm really glad that I'm learning about it. And I think that now that I know, I can kind of go forward and make more, do more research on it and make more of a proposal and say to our government, listen, just like there are Just like there are high quality cocoa farms in this country, there are also probably just as high quality wheat crops and things of that other nature in other Caribbean countries. We just have to be willing to look and take partnership with them. That's the whole reason of groups like CARICOM. We're a sub member, I think, but I think we still have a ways to go in terms of using those partnerships to our benefit. So I'd like to see more interactions.
Cool. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Julian, any final thoughts?
Thank you. I mean, I noted one question from Ryan that I'd love to briefly address. Just speaking on, in particular, the incredible demand for housing in Trinidad and Tobago specifically, and wondering how traditional methods or the utilization of traditional materials would be able to keep up with that demand. Based on my understanding, especially in terms of sort of more recent iterations of efforts towards utilizing more traditional methods, a lot of the jurisdictions that have been utilizing them do tend to be, for example, lesser developed countries in sub-Saharan Africa, as well as those in the Pacific, recognizing, of course, that the population difference between those Pacific islands and some of our islands are quite significant. But I would say that as a whole, these initiatives really need to be incorporated as part of larger development plans that relate to the housing departments as well as the planning and infrastructure departments of the relevant governments. Because I definitely by no means would want to suggest that the weight of all of the need for housing, social housing in particular, potentially could really be accommodated by these methods. And of course, something that's really crucial when approaching this is to ensure that it is really meeting the needs of those with more needs. Realistically, of course, we don't want it to turn into a case of, this is just the new thing for the upper class to be able to sort of show off, I suppose. So I would say at the end of the day, there's no perfect solution, and that every small effort really goes a long way in contribution to the end goal. I definitely think that, for example, Singapore has implemented a lot of these more traditional methods, especially when it comes to, for example, the design of housing for cooling and light, which is something that takes a significant weight off of, for example, electricity bills when we are actually able to take advantage of our local environments, of the breeze, wind direction, etc. And of course, the importation of a lot of these materials that may not really be appropriate for the environment can be incredibly pricey. And a lot of the holdup, I know, especially in Cayman, is that the cost of these materials have increased, as well as there's a difficulty in actually getting them here. So really, I think, especially in the case of the Caribbean, it's early stages of this sort of discussion. So definitely, these are important, really important questions to ask. But I'm sure that further down the line, they can be addressed with more clarity. Thank you for your question, and I hope that assists in answering.
Fantastic.
Is it okay if I just comment on that question as well?
Sure.
I think everything Julian said completely true. I just want to point out that there's also a lot of our natural or historical buildings back home are made of this kind of, not concrete, but this natural structure called wattle and daub. And it's really quite amazing how well reinforced and how strong these products are, or these resources are, because many of these the buildings that use the wattle and daub method are still standing. So I think, like Julian said, obviously you'd have to the whole responsibility would not be on these natural resources. But I think if we gave them a chance, they'd be able to do so much good, especially with if we look at thatch rope and how strong and how in demand it was in the 1960s. That same resilience is shown throughout a lot of our other natural resources. So I'd like to see that given a chance as well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. So at this time, I would like to invite Ms. Kira Rupsing, the Senior Heritage Preservation Officer at the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, also the project lead for the Resilient Heritage Trinidad and Tobago project. So Ms. Rupsing, to the podium to give us the vote of thanks.
Yes, thank you very much, Joseph. Good evening, everyone. And wow, absolutely wow. What I love about the speakers today was that they highlighted all these different aspects of nature and culture that just make a country resilient against climate change. And this initiative came from the Resilience Heritage Project, which is a 2-year project that the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago is working on currently. That's actually funded by the US Ambassador's Fund for Cultural Preservation. And we were so grateful that our partner National Trust, the Cayman Islands National Trust, has agreed to do this lecture. If it's one thing I've learned about National Trust across the world, we're not alone. There's so many of us, and they're always willing to share their knowledge, share their best practices. So we thank you all so much for coming, because we know climate change requires a collaborative effort to fight this global crisis. So from the top, we had Kimberly Rose from the Craig Group speaking about the Keeping History Above Water Conference and the Resilient Heritage Project. Thank you so much, Kimberly. I did drop the link to the registration for the conference in the chat, so please do sign up. It's entirely free online, and registration closes on Sunday, the 12th. So you just have a couple more days to sign up. Thank you so much, Catherine Child, for introducing us to the Cayman Islands National Trust and all of the work you're doing, and for putting together this amazing youth panel tonight. Rian Porter talking about the climate justice and the role of the youth. Jordan Lyle, part of the Protect Our Future group, talking about sustainable energy. Evie Sweetman talking about the effects of climate change on oceans and reefs. Lily Ann Aleria talking about the plastic crisis, which as Trinidadians, we know it's a real problem that we have, and then how that crisis connected to climate change. Aaliyah General talking about agriculture as a primary tool for combating food insecurity in the Caribbean. Thank you so much. And then Julian Menko, thank you for making that effort to jump back in. We know maybe if we had solar power, we wouldn't be going down, right? Hint, hint. And thank you so much for talking about the historic heritage and climate change. And I know in the conference, we do have a panel talking specifically about architecture and planning and all of that. So I think it'll be particularly relevant to what we're discussing today. So to all our panelists and our lovely audience, thank you so much for sticking through with us and asking all these amazing questions. Feel free to sign up for the conference, to reach out to any one of us. I see lots of emails being shared in the chat. And thank you all so much. Joseph?
Thank you very much, Ms. Rupsing, our Senior Heritage Preservation Officer and the lead for the Resilient Heritage Trinidad project. So at this time, I thank you all, just to sum things up. Thank you all for joining us for another installment of the Toothbagay Lecture Series. We had a blast. We had a blast. Again, thank you to the panel. Thank you, Catherine. Thank you, everyone who participated to bring this together. So at this time, do have a wonderful evening. Don't forget to look up the National Trust of Trinidad and Tobago, look up the National Trust of the Cayman Islands, and also join us for the Keeping History Above Water Conference. All right? And we have some refreshments, so you can just go to your fridge, open it, and take what you want. Open buffet. Do have a wonderful evening, everyone. Thank you.